Good morning and good afternoon to all of you. This is a Reloop webinar on litter, and I'm so excited to have four incredible speakers today from all over the world, from America, from Latvia, from the Netherlands, and from the UK. So it's an absolute delight. Let's not waste any time. First of all, just very quickly on the agenda, I'm going to do a quick intro, and then we're going to go and hear from all four of our speakers, about up to 10 to 12 minutes each. Then we're going to go into a Q&A at the end. There is a Q&A opportunity for speakers, so please take advantage of that. And we will be hopefully able to cover everything in the time that we have. So first of all, a welcome and a thanks for joining this Reloop webinar on litter and policy. Now, litter isn't just an eyesore, it's a data signal. And when we measure it well, we can design smarter and more accountable policy. A few months ago, Reloop released a very comprehensive study called Littered with Evidence. And it brought together as much data as we could find, primary data, from multiple jurisdictions. And it shows a clear and significant reductions in beverage container litter where strong deposit return systems are in place. And today we're going to explore linking robust data and analysis to policy targets, reporting, investment decisions that can drive real-world results and keep valuable materials in the loop. Just a couple of things about our incredible study. Basically, what it did in terms of making the connection to policy, in this case, deposit return policy for beverage containers, is it looked at the data from two perspectives. One was it looked at the difference in beverage container litter before and after deposit return programs. And it took samples from many, many jurisdictions where we had before and after data. And the results were outstanding. Basically, in some cases, up to 70% beverage container reduction of litter within a year to 2 years. The other piece of data was comparative data, looking at jurisdictions that had deposit return and those that didn't, and measuring how much of the litter was beverage containers. And of course, it was significantly less in those jurisdictions with deposit return. So the data, in our opinion, is the absolute evidence, irrefutable, to make the connection to deposit return. But it doesn't stop here. It keeps going. There are other pieces of litter. There are other policies which are effective. So we are at a really important time right now where we can start to analyze the litter, talk to the experts, and learn more. So let's move forward then with our first speaker. Coming to you from the Netherlands is Dirk Groot. And Dirk is better known in the Netherlands as Zerfinador, which is the terminator of litter, and has been collecting detailed information about litter for years. His data played an important role in the decision-making process that led to the introduction of the deposit return system in the Netherlands, and most recently, its expansion. His data is also included in official reports, in the Dutch government's reports about litter. And with his data, he also triggered other changes that led producers to decrease the share of plastics in litter in Netherlands. Dirk has a unique perspective on litter and is happy to tell you more about it. And of course, especially about the consequences of the introduction of the deposit system in the Netherlands, which he will substantiate with data. Dirk, if you're ready to share, the floor is yours.
All right. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. My name, let me show, is Dirk Groot. I'm from the Netherlands. You could say I am Groot, but I'm not. My nickname is the Zwerfinator, which is a combination of the Dutch word for litter, that's zwerfafval, and the Terminator. I look very dangerous here, but I'm not. What I do, I pick up litter since 2014. I do studies for companies and cities to help them decrease their litter problem. I go to schools to give classes, and I go to companies and cities to tell about the litter problem and what we can do about it. So that's what I do for a living. And I'm also an activist. Here you see me with Marijn Tinga, the plastic soup server. He's also in the audience, I heard. He's a partner in crime. All right. I started picking up litter in 2014, but then in 2016 I had to do more because picking up litter is not a solution, too badly. Uh, I started taking pictures of every piece of litter I picked up with my cell phone, smartphone. And the first reason for that is I wanted to show that there is more litter than we see. For instance, this is a picture of a KFC. There's a McDonald's behind it in my city. And if you go have a look like that, the city was and the government were doing research by just looking around and, well, we don't see litter. It's very clean here. But I knew when I started picking up litter, I could find a lot of litter yet. So on this piece of grass, I found this amount of litter. And because I took pictures, I could also show where I found it because the smartphone collects the information of the geolocation as well. So that's why I started doing this. I also started adding data like what is it made of, what's been in it, what brand is it. And I wanted to have as much information about the litter as possible. And then you can create lists. I like lists because I used to work in IT for many years, but you don't only see a list. You only see a list. And to show what's possible, I started a project in 2016 in the fall in my own city. That's Purmerend, 10 miles north of Amsterdam. I did 110 kilometers of research. I picked up almost 225,000 pieces of litter. I took pictures of all of it. So that gave me a lot of information. And there were, of course, a lot of beverage containers too, really a lot. I give you the numbers here, but I can also show you in the amounts. I did an exposition of all the litter I picked up in this project on a central square in my city. And this was the exposition. And if you look at it from above, this is the exposition. And if I took away the beverage containers, I took away this amount of the litter. It was about 30% of the weight and 40% of the volume of the litter. So that was only my city. I decided to do litter research all over the country for myself, but also for companies and cities. And the last 7 years or so, I did research all over the countries. It's almost 1,000 days, 5,500 kilometers, and almost 150,000 beverage containers. So I'm going to tell you what I learned from that. But before I do that, I go back to the spring of 2017. The guy on the left, Marijn Tinga, the plastic soup server, went to the Dutch parliament. He had 50,000 autographs, so he could go there. And he wrote a special motion that said we want 90% less bottles on the streets and in nature. So all the members that were present signed that petition. And the Secretary of State said, well, this is going to be the policy for now. You see this woman with the blue scarf? She was Stientje van Veldhoven. She is Stientje van Veldhoven. She was a member of parliament. A month later, I met her and I gave her my first report on litter. And I think a half year later, she became Secretary of State. And she said to the industry, you got 2 more years. And in 2 years, there have to be 70% less bottles on the streets. If not, there's going to be deposit money on plastic bottles. So they started measuring, and also did I. The industry started doing awareness campaigns, placed extra bins, did all kinds of things, but the number of plastic bottles I found didn't get any less. This is the amount of bottles per kilometers. That is how I measure it. I walk and I walk, I keep track of distance, and I count. So the decision was made, there's going to be deposit money. It was in July 2021. And after that, we have 70% less bottles on the streets in the Netherlands. That's great, isn't it? But in fact, the real effect of deposit money is bigger. There's only deposit money on plastic bottles for water and soda and lemonade. And if I count these bottles, there's 80% less plastic bottles. There are also bottles with a voluntarily deposit money system for juice, fresh juices, and they are 50% less now. That's good. But there are also bottles that are not in the deposit scheme, especially for dairy and wine, and I found those more. So where the bottles with deposit money go down, the other bottles go up. Side effect of that. Well, the same thing happened with cans 2 years later. The industry had to make it 70% less. It didn't work. So from April 2023, there's deposit money on all cans, no exclusions. And we find 82% less cans now. So that works great. And if I combine the bottles and the cans that are in the deposit scheme, I find 81% less of that. Or, there are some side effects, of course, with any cure. First is the drink cartons. I find more drink cartons since the start of the deposit money schemes. 90% more drink cartons. And especially this kind, 0.4 till half a liter. There are an alternative for plastic bottles, and some companies started changing from plastic bottles to the drink cartons. And they look like cardboard, but of course the inside of it, it's plastic, aluminum, cannot be recycled. It's a bad thing. And some companies, I'll show you some brands, changed from plastic bottles to drink cartons. And because of that now, I found 200% more of those medium-sized drink cartons. So they should be in the system as well, we think. I also find more drink pouches. I don't know what the reason of that is, but we're fighting against this as well. We're going to publish a report about it very quickly, me and Marijn Tinga. All right, but on average, I find 50% less beverage containers now. So that's a great step forward. And if you think, well, this only Dirk's, his figures, my figures are included in the official reports of the government as a second opinion, but we see the same developments. All right. Now, there are still plastic bottles and cans we find. What are those? Of all the plastic bottles I find, 42% are not in the deposit system. So they will not never be brought back. And 50% of them are in the deposit system. Well, the system of deposit money works like this. If you throw it on the street, someone else will pick it up. But if there's no label on it, you cannot bring it back because there's no barcode in it. The machine will not accept it. If the bottle is flat, the machine does not accept it, and companies don't want to accept flat bottles. So nobody picks it up except litter pickers or the city. And there are some other imported bottles from exotic supermarkets that have no deposit money and nobody picks it up. So the plastic bottles that I still find that are in the deposit system, 46% of them have no label. We're fighting that at the moment. 20% is too damaged and 33% is imported illegal. So nobody is going to pick those up. The same thing with cans. Only 20% of the cans I find I can bring back to the store for the money. And if I don't pick it up, someone else will. And the other 87%, I pick them up, the city picks them up, but no one else. And the reasons are, of course, also the flat cans. They're not accepted. And there are also exotic imported cans that have no deposit money and they will not be returned or will not be picked up. So as I see the cans that I find now, 70% of them is too damaged, but they are in the system, and 30% are imported illegally or by people themselves. So there's some improvements to be made there. Well, anyway, the conclusion. Deposit money works like crazy. Yes. But the Dutch system can still be improved. We need deposit money on all beverage containers, so on all plastic bottles and also the drinking cartons, stuff like that. We need more collection points. You can only bring them back to the big supermarkets and some train stations, but sometimes you have to walk a long way, and people don't do that. We need more collection points. We need better labels that don't get off too soon. And there should also be a mandatory collection of the damaged beverage containers. You can scan them anyhow and collect them. They did a couple of years ago with the plastic bottles, but they stopped there. And of course, there should be a ban on sale of beverage containers without a deposit. At this moment, the responsibilities is for the big companies and the importing companies. And if you have a shop, you can sell bottles without deposit money. So it's not illegal. All right. And maybe there's one other big problem, if you follow the media, is the problem of broken open trash bins. Maybe you've heard of that. It's people looking in bins, trying to find bottles and cans with deposit money. And if you look at the Dutch media, they say it's a big problem and it's everywhere, but it's not. Last year, me and Marijn Tinga, the plastic soup server, we did a big research. We asked people to take pictures of all the bins in their own environment all throughout the countries. We had more than 10,000 bins on the picture. We wanted to show them the problem is only in the big cities. We don't see it anywhere else. So the status of the bins that they were taken pictures of, it's 5% was damaged or open. Quite a lot, but 95% were very clean and very good. And in the big cities, 12% of the bins were broken open, which still means 88% of the bins are okay. And outside of the big cities, only 1% of the bins had problems. So the problem is very local and very much smaller than what the media writes about, but it's fun to write about the media because people like to read problems. All right. So here's another one. This is in Dutch. Too badly I had no time to translate this. If I look into the bins, I also do research of the contents of bins. And also in the bins, there's 70% less beverage containers. So in the Netherlands, the public bins are less full. They have to empty them less. And the contents of these bins will never be recycled. It will all be burned. Now, all the bottles and cans that are not in the public bins are now returned and recycled. So we don't have really a bin problem. It's a big city problem. It's something we have to solve, but it's very much less than the media tells us. All right. Well, that's what I had to tell. Here's my information. You can find me. If you want to support me, you can support the Swervenator Foundation. And that's it for now. I hope I am finishing in time. And if there's any questions or whatever,
just slightly over, but that was incredibly interesting. Thank you very much, Ruud. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure there's some questions at the end. We're going to move to Catherine. Catherine, perhaps you can begin the sharing process while I talk a little bit about you, if you don't mind. So Catherine, we've known Catherine for many years at Reloop. Catherine is the Policy and Advocacy Manager at Marine Conservation Society in the UK. Over the last 10 years, Catherine has been focusing on the promotion of their beach cleaning and litter surveying project, Beach Watch, and using the data collected to drive change in marine litter policy. This has included calling for deposit return schemes, bans on certain single-use plastics, action to tackle sewage-related debris, and to move towards a circular economy. Prior to MCS, Catherine has held public engagement and environmental education roles after studying marine and coastal resource management at Aberdeen University. Catherine is also a diver. So pleasure to have you, Catherine. Please take the floor.
Thanks so much, Clarissa, and hello everyone. Really delighted to be here. So I wanted to share a picture first and ask the questions, why deposit return schemes for the Marine Conservation Society? And I think, as we just saw from Dirk's presentation there, a picture paints 1,000 words. Bottles and cans on beaches here in the UK. We wanted to come up with a solution. So what can we do to then move it forward? So as Clarissa highlighted, one of my main roles is promoting Beach Watch. So it's our citizen science program. So you might be familiar with citizen science, the idea that anybody can go out and collect really important data and information. And this is what we do a lot of at the Marine Conservation Society. We work with our volunteers to gather important data that we then use to take to governments, take to stakeholders and parliamentarians to try and get policy change. So as with all citizen science, it will have a methodology. So we ask volunteers to adopt a 100-metre stretch of beach, and as well as removing all the litter from it, very similar to what Derek's been doing, is we ask them to record all the different types of litter and how much of that litter that they find. So this is what our survey form looks like. It can look a little bit overwhelming at first. It's not just beverage containers that we look at all types of litter to use for different policy asks. So we've used it successfully so far for the single-use plastic bans that we have here in the UK, some particular to Scotland where I'm based, such as banning of the single-use plastic cotton buds. The Beach Watch data was really important. And of course, today I'm here to speak about how vital all the data collected on these forms has been for deposit return action. We also do have an app now as well that is very handy, especially for some beach cleans here in the UK, which can be very wet and windy. And again, it just kind of encourages more people to take part, whether they're doing it themselves, part of a family, a school group, or sometimes really big events with up to 100, 150 volunteers turning up. And Beach Watch, we say to volunteers, you can take part in at any time of year. But we also run a flagship event called the Great British Beach Clean, and that's happening again this September. And this is where we can start to use data to even just advertise for volunteers to get involved and take part. The more data we have, the more robust it is, the stronger our call is then to our policymakers. And it's wonderful here to be part of such a brilliant international community all working towards the same thing. I think it's always so important for motivating our volunteers that when they go and do a beach clean and a survey, they're not just then helping clean up their own local beach. The data they collect goes on to have impact locally, regionally, nationally, and even globally. So one of the big reasons we run the Great British Beach Clean in September is because it coincides with the International Coastal Cleanup. And you'll see a photo that's me and some colleagues down at a beach in Edinburgh, showcasing that literally one event can have global ramifications and that data can keep on working long beyond all the litter pickers having been put away. And the other key international data set that we feed into is the OSPAR data set. So this is the kind of convention of like governments around the North Sea Atlantic. And the Marine Conservation Society is actually contracted by DEFRA, by the UK government, to contribute to the UK's beach litter data set to this convention as well. So I think it's a really good kind of moment and mark for our volunteers, again, to show how important it is, the data that they're collecting, that the UK government is actually relying on them to be able to showcase what is happening on the UK beaches in this international context. But to move on to the data, which is a little bit what we're focusing on today, this is what we do every year with all the data collected from our volunteers. We launch a Beach Watch annual report. And this will look at some of the big headline stats for the UK and the Channel Islands as a whole, but also for each of the countries within the UK. We call it the movers and shakers, what's going up, what's going down. But then we can also look at our specific items. So today we're here to talk about deposit return schemes. So I went and spoke to our citizen science data officer who could then pull out more specific data. Now, I've been here for 10 years and I remember going to a Reloop conference on week 1 on the job on deposit return schemes. So our data goes back into the 90s and we've been actively using it very much over the last decade. So we can start to look at presence of beverage containers on beaches, which is the top graph there. And that's kind of powerful to show that, you know, still over 96% of beaches have bottles and cans on them. We can also do a little bit similar to what you did, Derek, as well. We do over 100 meters, the average number of bottles and cans that we're finding as well. And then we can also pull out things like heat maps as well. And this is where a lot of the campaigning can be really powerful, especially as we were trying to get some traction on commitments to deposit return here in the UK. We actually even worked quite locally with local parliamentarians so they could see issues on their beaches, in their constituencies, and they could then add that pressure on their kind of national colleagues. And I just want to give, this is a few examples of the infographics that we then produce using the data for across the UK and the Channel Islands, and also then focusing in on that data. So as well as sending it direct to parliamentarians and policymakers, so much of it is to raise awareness amongst the public and to get support and buy-in from our volunteers and members. So this year we did focus again on deposit return, and we've done it for many years now, pulling out these specific stats as part of this big press report. And then, of course, with devolution here in the UK, we did actually have the Scottish Government committing first to implementing deposit return schemes. And I know we don't have time to go into the rollercoaster ride that has been the different commitments from across the UK. But it is important that we then pull out each kind of country in the UK so we can speak to those respective parliaments and governments. And what's fantastic, both the Scottish Government and the Welsh and the UK Government for England have all put on record how much they rely on Beachwatch data for policy decision making. So again, really important to have that recognition of the data being used. And then I just thought I'd end with a little bit of a quick history, because the data sometimes can be a bit dry on its own, but it drives all of the campaigning and all of the action that we've done so far. It gave us our remit for working on it and for keep working on it. So this was me 10 years ago, my first event in the Scottish Parliament with a reverse vending machine as part of the Have You Got the Bottle campaign that was headed up by Action to Protect Rural Scotland, a charity we worked really closely with. And over the years, we've also then had support from them in regards to our own AGM. So this is our chief executive, Sandy Luck, putting in a bottle that we had volunteers from across the country pick up on their beach cleans. And we had a label made up. They were all on the attendees' seats, and they had to go and then put in their bottle. Although it wasn't deposit at that point, they got a dram of Glenmorangie whiskey, who was one of our partners at the time. So that went down very well, but I don't think we can legislate for that. And international learning, we've always recognised as being so important, which is why this webinar is so brilliant today. This was me with Billy the Bottle, the Iron Brew bottle from Scotland, when he went on a trip to Norway with a few charity partners to learn about what the Norwegian scheme and what we could bring back here to the UK. And it's also sharing that data with everybody. So this is a primary school called Cramond Primary in Edinburgh. They went out and did the beach cleans with us. So again, it doesn't matter your age, you can go get this important data. And they then created this giant jellyfish out of those plastic bottles. And this was the first time that we had the then Environment Minister in Scotland speak to us about deposit return. She didn't want to speak about it beforehand. She wasn't interested. And then when we had these pupils come along to the Parliament with this brilliant jellyfish, that was the first time we got her speaking about it. So it's so important to connect that data to kind of real life stories and action and people. And I have to admit, I couldn't come along here today without giving a shout out to Jenny, who I know is a brilliant colleague of many on the call now at Reloop. But I first knew Jenny as one of our Sea Champion volunteers doing these beach cleans. And then she got so interested in the policy side, she started running the campaign, the Have You Got the Bottle campaign, and is now doing that brilliant work internationally for deposit return. So again, when you combine the data and the people and the creative arts, this is Edinburgh Zoo making penguins out of plastic bottles, again, to talk about deposit return, I think is really where you get some amazing things happening. But it's not just Beachwatch data that we use. We're always looking at other data sets and other ways we can use it. So this was actually us presenting our wild bottle sighting data. So this is where we're actually just saying, you don't have to be on a beach clean. We see littered bottles and cans everywhere. So we were encouraging people to take a photo, put it up on social media with the hashtag, and then we created a map to really showcase where all these bottles and cans were turning up as well. And it was another opportunity to engage parliamentarians and also to engage the press as well. So we've had a lot of fun over the years doing so many things with Reloop. The most recent one was our Youth Ocean Network created a video, again, calling again for deposit return to really move ahead in the UK. We were delighted that the video was shown at the Labour Party conference event in November, and also again at Westminster, where again, we were showcasing that important Beachwatch data right in the heart of government. So we're hoping that here in the UK, we will have deposit return coming in 27. It's been a rocky roller coaster ride, and that data will be continuing to be used to keep that agenda going. And it was so brilliant to see the Reloop report, because that was just mwah, chef's kiss. That's what we wanted to see, was that countries that had deposit return had less bottles and cans on beaches. So we hope that our Beachwatch data set can then result in beaches like this here in the UK, free from litter. So thank you so much for having us along.
Well, thank you very much, Catherine. And I do think that, you know, your work has been so critical in the decisions in the UK. Litter has typically been the deciding factor when it comes to deposit return. It always seems to be one of the main reasons why ultimately governments go in that direction. It's an emotionally upsetting issue, and I think it's very powerful, all the more reason why this data is so important. We are going to now move to Latvia, where we have Jānis Brizga. And Jānis and Reloop have been working together since before the deposit return program was introduced back in 2002. So a few years now with a good system underway. Jānis is a board member at the NGO Green Liberty and a senior researcher and assistant professor at the University of Latvia Environmental Science Department. Previously, he was the chair of the NGO network ANPED, the Northern Alliance for Sustainability, the Environmental Policy Program Director at WWF Latvia, and Executive Director at the Clean Baltic Latvia office. He has a PhD in geography and a master's in social science in public administration at the University of Latvia. Yanis, it's a pleasure to have you here. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot. Thanks for the introduction. I will be talking today about some of the studies we did over the last few years to try to compare and to analyze how the beach and coastal litter has changed since introduction of the deposit refund system in Latvia. As Clarissa was saying, I've been working for environmental NGO Green Liberty, and we were campaigning for a little bit over 20 years for having the deposit refund system in Latvia. And it came to the parliament, the legal proposal, like I think 3 or 4 times. But then finally, in 2019, the government approved introduction of deposit refund system, and it came into force in February of 2020. So these are also COVID years, but legislature was really interested in introduction of the deposit refund system, and littering was one of the arguments. Apart from some other, I think one of the most decisive factors was EU targets for beverage container collection. But littering was certainly on the agenda when discussing in the parliament the introduction of the system. So we have flat rate deposit, which is 10 euro cents, and which is not very big, the deposit rate. But as we will see, it's still motivating for people to collect deposit beverage containers. The deposit system covers the main beverage containers made of plastic, metal, aluminum cans, and glass beverage containers. We have quite a lot of standardized glass bottles, especially for beer, which are widely used, and producers are also very much interested for collection and returning of these glass bottles, because that makes it much cheaper than purchasing new glass bottles. So there are multiple benefits from the deposit refund system, as we can see now. We have, as I said, we use 2 types of studies. One was on coastal littering, where we had 3 monitoring sessions just before the introduction of the deposit refund system, and then in the following years, in 2022 and 2023. So we could compare how the amount of littering has been changing over the years. We had 17 coastal sites which we monitored, and it was we have identified in each of them specific transacts which we were visually monitoring, collecting main data on how many and what type of beverage containers we can find on those sites. From 2022, we also included additional parameter, which is presence of the deposit labels on identified littering items. And another type of study which we've been doing together with the Environmental Education Center is on beach litter. They've been doing this beach study throughout the coastline of Latvia, which is more than 500 kilometers since 2012, and there's been almost 500 surveys so far done on 45 coastal sites. So we have the data from this historical data from more than 10 years ago. Initially, the study was done using the UNEP methodology, but since 2023, we adjusted the EU Joint Research Center material data protocol. But we believe that data still can be comparative because the main, especially the data around the deposit containers, have similar kind of recording. We also have three types of what we call three layers of deposit system littering. First is deposit bottles, then could be secondary items, for example, cups of the bottles, and linked items, which in this case is mostly, for example, broken glass from bottles, which we can identify on a beach. And some of the main parameters around percentage of the total, how much of the total litter is beverage containers, items from total, and changes over time. I will show just some of the results from those two studies. Both of them clearly show that there is significant decrease here from the coastal study. We can see from 21 to 23, 56% decrease in beverage containers, deposit related beverage containers. We can also see that there are few sites here in a table showed red, where there is actually no decrease but increase, and these are bordering sites with the neighboring countries, where we see the impact from the tourism. Similarly to the previous presenters, I think there is a question of cross-border contamination and how the beverage containers travel between the countries. But if we compare all the other sites, there is a clear decrease in beverage related littering here. If we compare between different types of containers, the biggest decrease is for plastic bottles, metal cans, and least decrease is for glass bottles, because in many cases for glass bottles we cannot identify that it's deposit labeled, because it's in many cases it's has paper label, which easily washes away or tears away on a beach or on a coastline. So differently maybe from metal cans, which usually have printed labels, and then it's more durable on if it's thrown out in an environment. Glass bottles, yeah, is very popular as beverage containers in Latvia, and there is the question how to make it more durable also for collecting these kind of types of bottles to return them back to the system. And here, I think my time is running out. Here to the end, some of the main data from the beach litter surveys. We can also see a significant decrease in the deposit-related beverage containers. We identified only 6 out of 43 beach litter surveys in 22, for example, which has significantly decreased from the previous studies where the deposit-related beach litter could be identified in more than half of the surveys. We can also see significant difference between the rural beach sites and urban. So in more urban beaches, there is more deposit-related beach littering than in the rural areas. And as I mentioned, also here we see that glass bottles, we have much more level 3 and 2, so cups and broken glass on a beach is more visible. So for conclusions, the introduction of the deposit refund system in Latvia has significantly reduced the littering rate. We can also see that this improvement continues also in 23. So this is not just 1 year comparison, but over a few years we see that there's following improvements, and there are quite many unlabeled or foreign labeled littering, which highlights the need for more cross-border cooperation between the countries, and to decrease that type of littering. Yeah, so this is that's all from my side. You can also see we have also published the paper in sustainability where there is more data and maybe more discussion about the results. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yanis, for your interesting deep dive into the data. I appreciate it. And now we're going to move to Jed. Jed, if you could load your presentation. Jed comes to us from the Bay in Providence, Rhode Island. He is the director of advocacy for Save the Bay in Providence. He has over 20 years experience in environmental advocacy and policy, and previously held leadership positions at Clean Water Action, the Sierra Club, Ohio Citizen Action, and the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency. He was named one of the 24 to watch in 2024 by the Providence Journal for his work to combat plastic pollution, and has worked on almost every environmental issue you can think of. Jed, thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Clarissa, for having me here today, and thank you for the work that Reloop does. It's an honor to be on this panel with my colleagues from around the globe who are doing very similar great work where they are. As Clarissa said, I'm Judd Thorp. I'm the Director of Advocacy with Save the Bay. You're probably not familiar with us as an organization, but we have been around since 1970. We are located in Providence, Rhode Island, which is the smallest U.S. state, small but mighty, we like to say. We are known as the ocean state because of our relationship with the ocean. The bay and the ocean are important here, not just in terms of our environment, but our history, our culture, many aspects of our economy. There is a deep concern here in Rhode Island about the health of our bay, the health of our oceans. I will say historically, we have not focused a lot on waste and recycling policy. Most of our work has been on reducing other forms of pollution like wastewater, bacteria, nutrients. But in recent years, we have seen an increase in litter and marine debris. Microplastics in the bay and the ocean are a growing problem. So out of necessity, we and other water-focused groups have really started to work more and more on waste policy, which got us into what we call the bottle bill campaign, or an effort to pass a deposit return system. We help lead a coalition of many other statewide environmental organizations who for the past few years have been coordinating and organizing a strong campaign to try to finally get a deposit return system passed here in the state of Rhode Island. We think upstream first, and beverage containers, single-use beverage containers, are an increasing problem for cities and towns with our stormwater collection system. City and town staff spend a lot of time cleaning beverage containers out of our storm drains. The picture there on the right is a giant pile of mostly plastic bottles that were cleaned out of what's called a siphon inlet structure here in the city of Providence. Similar to Catherine, we help lead the Rhode Island effort for the annual International Coastal Cleanup. We engage thousands of our members as volunteers in those cleanups. We collect very detailed data, and that data is extremely helpful when we are at the State House, talking to legislators, talking to decision makers. That cleanup data, probably more than anything else, has really driven the advocacy and our public education work on this issue over the past 3 years. As you can see here from the graphic on the right-hand side, beverage containers and beverage container pieces are annually the most collected item during our shoreline and neighborhood cleanups. As a category here, this is just a slightly different chart that sort of shows where beverage containers fit with other types of waste and trash that we pick up along the shoreline. Frankly, the actual raw numbers of how many beverage containers we pick up are frankly less important than the ratio to the whole. And whether it's 8,000 plastic bottles or 80,000 plastic bottles, the numbers really don't mean a whole lot to decision makers. It's really where beverage containers sit as a percentage of that overall problem that's most impactful. This here on the right is a picture of one of our members, Bill McCusker, who, along with some of our other members, collected over 85,000 miniature alcohol containers, which we call here, we call them NIPs. People are tired of seeing these things in their neighborhoods, in their communities. It's a huge problem. And again, Bill and our volunteers collected over 85,000 of those 2 years ago in just 3 months. So the visuals of this are very powerful when we're up at the State House talking to decision makers. In addition to our data on litter from our litter cleanups, the University of Rhode Island here did a study 2 years ago that found there's now roughly 1,000 tons of microplastic in the bottom sediment of Narragansett Bay. That is very concerning. The health of the bay, as I said, is very important here for a whole host of reasons: tourism, our economy, fisheries, the health of our beaches, and this data, again, is very powerful. The map on the right shows you the other U.S. states that already have deposit return systems in place. You can see there's a cluster of states here in New England, the Northeast U.S. Most of our neighbors have had deposit return systems in place for decades now. And we know from the data, because we have decades of data from other states and from other countries, that yes, deposit return systems work, both in reducing litter and in improving recycling. Those two things are related, but really separate issues. And a lot of our advocacy is focused on the litter reduction benefit. When we start talking about solid waste policy and sort of the long-term life of our landfill, that really doesn't resonate with people in the way that, the beverage containers that people are seeing out there in their communities, in the environment. So we really focus more on the litter reduction benefit of deposit return systems than on sort of the recycling and the solid waste policy benefits. Because when we start to focus on solid waste policy and the life of our landfill, there are a lot of other things that you can do policy-wise to improve the life of our landfill. But if you're concerned about litter, it's really, deposit return systems are really the only game in town in terms of policies that are really proven to be effective. We did not pass a bottle bill 40, 50 years ago when our other neighboring states did it. Instead, we passed a non-refundable tax on beverage containers, which is still in place, 8 cents per case. That money was supposed to go towards litter reduction and recycling efforts, but it does not. It just goes into our general revenue fund. We also have a law that's still on the books from 30 years ago that says only containers that are achieving a 50% recycling rate shall be sold in the state. I don't think we're achieving a 50% recycling rate for any beverage container type, even aluminum. We had a task force in 2018 that looked a little bit at doing a deposit return system, but I think the politics seemed too complicated to take that on at that point. So we did other things like passing a statewide ban on single-use plastic bags and other legislation related to straws and balloons. But really, you know, the bottle bill we all knew was the big thing that would have the most impact. So in March of 2023, we and other organizations in the state finally created a statewide coalition to really get organized in our effort to try to get a deposit return system passed here. We had very favorable legislative hearings at our state house, our state senate. We had a lot of public support, a lot of media attention that focused on the problem and the solution. The legislature wasn't quite comfortable with doing this in 2023. So instead, they created a special legislative study commission to bring together state legislators, which you see there in blue and red. Green are the statewide environmental groups who were part of that special study commission, regulators, and then representatives from retailers, liquor stores, the beverage industry. That study commission released its final report in April of just this year. Not surprisingly, the study commission had some findings which found, as we know, yes, deposit return systems work. We did a deep dive looking at data from other states, other countries. We relied heavily on data from Reloop, so thank you for all of your reports. One thing that is a challenge for us here is that our neighboring states of Connecticut and Massachusetts have the worst performing deposit return systems in the world. So we had to make the case that, you know, we're not going to do what our neighbors in Massachusetts and Connecticut do. We proposed a bill that was modeled more on the Oregon model, which is really the most successful deposit return system here in the US. That study commission report contained 3 recommendations. The first recommendation was to do both a deposit return system and extended producer responsibility for packaging. The second recommendation was, well, if you're not going to do both of those, let's at least do a deposit return system. And then the third recommendation, it was, if you're not going to do a deposit return system, then let's do EPR for packaging. We had a bill in play this year that would have done both a deposit return system and EPR for packaging, modeled off of the Oregon's, you know, sort of more of a producer-run model. The legislation got introduced late in the legislative session, which goes from January to June. So we were not successful again this year, despite the fact that we had a lot of legislative support. The legislature is instead going to do a implementation analysis to really do a deeper dive on exactly what a deposit return system would look like here. You know, these systems are somewhat complicated once you start looking at the details, and our legislators weren't quite comfortable. There was a lot of opposition, as you might imagine, from our retailers, from the beverage industry, who spent probably millions of dollars here in this effort called Stop the Rhode Island Bottle Tax. They were really trying to frame this as a tax on consumers. That's what we were up against. I will say just here in my last slide, you know, we're going to keep at it here. A lot of times, you know, this is a heavy lift to get this done. Luckily, we have data on our side. We know that bottle bills work. So that is good that the facts support our effort. We know that a majority of our state legislators support a deposit return system. And we know through public polling that a majority of Rhode Islanders, through a couple of different public polls, support a deposit return system. So we're going to keep at it. We're going to keep using data, collecting data, educating the public, and we're confident that we can get this done hopefully next year. So with that, I'll stop and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jed. We are going to take the remaining time, jump straight into the Q&A. I'll remind you all, I should have reminded you earlier, we have a Q&A down below. You can type in your question. So let's start with Catherine. Question for Catherine, with 49% of beach clean findings being glass, do you think UK should include single-use glass in their DRS? Quick answer, please.
Yes, we always campaigned for it. The data said it. At the moment, we are taking what we can get to try and at least get a deposit return system in place, but the idea is we always wanted it to have all three materials, plus then looking to reuse and refill models in the future.
Awesome, thank you. To Derek, you say we need to include all beverage containers, including cartons, and I assume flexible pouches is part of that. And also need more collection points, presumably, especially on the go. Do you think an RVM model of DRS, where we use RVM technology, can cover all these packaging formats and the number of collection points needed? Or do you support other options as well, such as digital DRS? This is from a digital DRS proponent. Derek, to you.
All right, yes. Well, with modern technology, all packaging can be recognized, so they can be in a deposit return system. I have my own AI system that recognizes every packaging, so there's no limitations only, but we have to make new machines, new collection points, and more, of course, they can be smaller than the big machines we have now. So there can be machines on more points, also in smaller stores. And I don't support the digital deposit systems because well, you need to bring them to physical points, and otherwise the litter problem will not be solved. It might help to better collect the household waste, but it won't change the litter problem, I think.
Thank you. I think this is an open question. We are curious to know what kinds of impacts digital deposit systems will have on litter. And just as a reminder for those interested in digital deposit return, we have quite a bit of information on that at Reloop, including
Can I say something more?
Please.
Yeah, I know in Belgium they have plans for digital DRS systems, and people have to scan the products with their smartphone. All right, then you have about 11 million people using the smartphone with an app that costs a lot of money for a system to manage. A lot of people will not be able to work with the smartphone, or they don't want to. So there's a lot of extra problem, extra work, and extra costs that comes with a digital DRS system.
Thank you, Dirk. A question about passing on the cost from producers to consumers in terms of the deposit system. Indeed, there's no way to prevent that. Producers have the ability to include it in their price, so that is certainly something that can happen. There's no way to prevent that from happening, obviously. Jed, quick question to you in the US. Do you think there's any chance to achieve a DRS for the US in total, for the whole country, not just state by state, also to achieve harmonization on a high performance level? What are the main roadblocks in the US?
Well, it would certainly be ideal if we had a nationwide deposit return system, but I think unfortunately, with the politics being what they are here in the United States, and the political power of the beverage industry, which is fought long and hard against deposit return systems, I think the politics are such that it would be very hard to get it done at the national level. Certainly, this administration would probably not be open to it. So I think if we can get a couple more states to adopt deposit return systems, we can build momentum for maybe eventually a nationwide deposit return system.
Great. Thanks, Jed. A question here about AI in terms of how AI can help to refine the data and analytics. I mean, I think it's obvious that AI can help a lot. If anyone has any recommendations for software on that type of AI, please put it in the chat. For our friend here from Iran, Mahdi, nice to see you on the webinar. And I'm going to call it the end of the webinar right now with another minute to go, if you don't mind. Just a couple of takeaways from today, and keep in mind that Reloop will be at some point publishing a litter dashboard where we hope we can house a lot of this data. It's something we're working on, trying to get funding for, but certainly we have 2 existing dashboards which can be useful to you. If you haven't seen them, just Google Reloop Platform Dashboard and you'll find it. Couple of quick takeaways. Drink cartons. Big question around drink cartons. We're seeing them more and more in the litter stream. Do they need to become an obvious part of the scope of deposit return programs? The point about resonating with policymakers, that litter, as Jed said, is much more powerful than to talk about all of the circular economy benefits of recycling better quality materials. We still have a problem with those damaged containers or containers that don't have labels on them, and we need a solution for that. There are broken bins, not a lot, as the media might like to say there are, but I think we do need bin solutions. I'm talking about rings around bins where people can place their beverage container and they can be taken. This needs to get a lot of attention. The savings to municipalities is serious. Volume reductions means huge savings in terms of collection and processing. We cannot, we need to keep talking about that. And finally, the important issue of cross collaboration. This is an issue not only in America, it's an issue in Europe. It has been a request by the European Commission that we have collaboration amongst borders. So that is definitely something that we need to keep thinking about. It will help the litter problem. With that, I'm sorry we don't have more time. A huge thank you to our 4 speakers. Thank you very much. Your expertise is appreciated. Please continue your great work. Continue to work with us at Reloop, and we will get that information out there. Thank you all, and have a great rest of the week. Goodbye.